The rain poured down in heavy sheets, drumming against the pavement as Emily pulled her coat tighter around her body. She hurried down the narrow alley, the shortcut she always took on her way home from work. The air was cold, thick with the smell of damp earth and city grime. Her boots splashed through puddles, and she shivered, eager to get inside. Then she heard it, a sound so faint that she almost missed it over the rain. The desperate, high-pitched mewing of something small and helpless. Emily froze, her heart skipping a beat. She turned her head, scanning the darkened alley, her breath misting in the air. The sound came again, weak and pleading. Her eyes landed on a pile of broken wooden crates near the dumpster. She crouched down, peering into the small space between them. At first, she saw nothing but darkness. Then, a pair of glowing yellow eyes blinked back at her. Emily's breath hitched. The creature was tiny, shivering, its fur damp and matted. Its body was too thin, ribs faintly visible beneath its sleek, dark gray coat. But what struck her the most was how still it was, watching her, unblinking, as if studying her just as much as she was studying it. "Hey, little one," she whispered, reaching a cautious hand forward. The kitten flinched but didn't run. It simply stared, its strange golden eyes locked onto hers. Something about it felt different. The limbs were slightly too long for its small body. The ears, pointed and sharp, twitched at the faintest sound. But Emily pushed the thought away. Right now it was just a helpless creature in the cold. Carefully, she slipped her hands under its fragile body, lifting it from the wet ground. The kitten let out a soft sound. Not quite a meow, but something quieter, almost like a sigh. As she held it close to her chest, its tiny claws dug into her sweater, as if clinging to the warmth. Emily felt something tighten in her chest. It had no collar, no sign of belonging to anyone. Alone in the rain, trembling and fragile, it had no one in the world. "Don't worry," she murmured. "You're safe now." As she walked home, the kitten's glowing eyes never left her face. It didn't struggle. It didn't cry. It simply stared, as if it already knew. It was exactly where it was meant to be. Emily closed the door behind her, the warmth of her apartment wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. The storm outside raged on, but inside it was quiet, save for the occasional drip of rainwater from her coat onto the hardwood floor. She gently set the kitten down on a folded towel near the heater, watching as it stretched its long limbs and gave a small shake, droplets of water flinging from its fur. It looked up at her again, those piercing yellow eyes almost glowing under the dim kitchen light. She fetched a small bowl and poured some milk into it, sliding it toward the kitten, but it didn't move. Instead, it just sat there, watching her, its expression unreadable. Emily frowned. Any stray cat would be starving by now. She tried again, this time breaking off a small piece of chicken from her leftover dinner and placing it in front of the tiny creature. Finally, it moved, but not in the way she expected. It didn't sniff or paw at the food like a normal kitten would. It simply tilted its head, then in one swift motion, picked up the meat and swallowed it whole. A strange chill ran through her, but she brushed it off. The poor thing was probably too weak to eat properly. She reached out carefully, running her fingers through its damp fur. It was softer than she expected, but there was an odd coarseness to it, almost like the texture changed in certain spots. The kitten didn't resist. In fact, it leaned into her touch, letting out a low, rumbling sound. Not quite a purr, but something deeper. That night, Emily prepared a small cardboard box lined with a soft fleece blanket and placed it beside her bed. As she slipped under the covers, exhaustion settling into her bones, she glanced down at the little creature. It was already curled up, its long tail wrapped tightly around its body. But its eyes weren't closed. Even in the darkness, she could feel them on her, watching, unmoving. The next few days were strange. The kitten, which she decided to name Luna, never made a single meow after that first night. It was unnervingly silent, always appearing in different parts of the apartment without her noticing how it got there. She would leave it curled up on the couch, only to turn around minutes later and find it sitting in the kitchen, staring at her. It never played with the toys she bought, never batted at a string or chased a ball. Instead, it seemed more interested in shadows, often following them with its gaze as if they were alive. Her dog, Benny, refused to go near Luna. The first time they met, he had taken one sniff before letting out a low whimper and backing away, his tail tucked between his legs. The parrot, usually chatty and noisy, fell into an eerie silence whenever Luna entered the room. One night, Emily woke up to a strange noise. At first, she thought it was just the wind against the windows, but as she turned onto her side, her heart nearly stopped. Luna was sitting on her nightstand, completely still, its golden eyes wide and unblinking, staring right at her. She let out a shaky breath. "Luna," she whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "What are you?" The kitten didn't move. It only blinked once, slowly, as if it understood the question. Emily sat up in bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. Luna remained still, its golden eyes locked onto hers, unblinking. The dim glow from the streetlight outside cast long shadows across the room, making the moment feel even more surreal. For the first time since bringing Luna home, Emily felt something she couldn't quite place, something close to fear. But as she stared at the small creature perched on her nightstand, the feeling faded just as quickly as it had come. It was still just a kitten, small and fragile, curled up in the space next to her lamp. Maybe she was just imagining things. She had always been prone to overthinking. Letting out a slow breath, she reached out and ran her fingers gently down Luna's back. Its fur was cool, unnaturally smooth under her touch, but the low, rumbling sound it made, somewhere between a purr and a hum, was oddly soothing. "You're just a baby," she murmured, shaking her head at herself. A weird little thing, but still just a baby. Luna leaned into her hand as if responding to her words. Over the next few weeks, their bond deepened in ways Emily had never experienced with an animal before. Luna wasn't just attached to her, it was protective. It followed her from room to room, never making a sound, always watching. At first, she found it endearing. Then she started to notice other things. One evening, as she walked home from work, she got the uneasy feeling that someone was following her. The streetlights flickered, and the air felt thick with an unseen presence. She quickened her pace, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag. Then, just as she turned the last corner to her building, she heard footsteps behind her, heavy, deliberate. Her stomach twisted into a knot. Before she could react, a low growl cut through the silence. Not from a dog, not from any animal she recognized. It was deep, guttural, almost unnatural. Emily spun around just in time to see a shadow retreating into the alley. Luna sat at her feet, its back arched, fur standing on end, its golden eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. Emily's breath came in short, shallow gasps. Had Luna just protected her? When she reached her apartment, she locked the door behind her and collapsed onto the couch, trying to process what had happened. Luna jumped onto her lap, pressing its small body against her chest, its warmth steady and grounding. "You're not normal, are you?" Emily whispered, stroking its back. Luna didn't purr this time. It just stared at her, its expression unreadable. That night, she dreamed of golden eyes watching her from the darkness. And when she woke up, she wasn't entirely sure if the dream had ended or if it had only just begun. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The way Luna had growled that night, the way the shadow had disappeared the moment it did, it wasn't normal. It wasn't possible. She told herself that maybe she had imagined it, that maybe the fear had twisted reality in her mind. But the unease lingered, creeping into her thoughts at odd moments, refusing to let go. One evening, after another long day at work, she stepped into her apartment and instantly knew something was off. The air felt heavy, charged, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Her eyes swept across the space and her stomach clenched. Her bookshelf was overturned, papers and books scattered across the floor. A glass from the kitchen lay shattered near the couch. The curtains were moving slightly, though the windows were shut. Her first thought was an intruder. Had someone broken in? Her pulse pounded in her ears as she grabbed the heaviest object she could find, a lamp, and moved cautiously through the apartment. Every corner felt unfamiliar, every shadow stretched too long. Then she saw Luna, sitting calmly in the middle of the wreckage. Not frightened, not hiding, just watching. Emily exhaled sharply, setting down the lamp. "Luna," she muttered, running a hand through her hair. What the hell happened in here? The kitten blinked slowly, tilting its head. Something about the silence unsettled her. She grabbed her phone and checked the security camera feed, her fingers trembling slightly. She rewound to the time when she had left for work. The footage played normally, until it didn't. Her breath caught in her throat as she watched the screen. At first, it showed Luna curled up on the couch, perfectly still. Then, without warning, the screen glitched. A split-second static distortion. When the image cleared, Luna was no longer on the couch. It was near the bookshelf, standing on its hind legs. Emily's mouth went dry. She fast-forwarded the footage. Another glitch. Luna was now in the kitchen, looking straight into the camera. Another glitch. Now near the window. Another. Now sitting in the exact position she had found it in. Her fingers hovered over the screen, her whole body tense. The timestamps were normal. No skipped seconds, no missing footage. But what she was seeing wasn't possible. A cold sensation crept down her spine as she slowly turned to look at Luna. It was still sitting in the same spot, tail curled neatly around its paws. Its golden eyes met hers, unblinking, as if waiting. She swallowed hard. "You're not a cat," she whispered. Luna let out a soft sound, something between a hum and a sigh. Then, for the first time in weeks, it blinked slowly and deliberately, as if acknowledging the truth she was only beginning to understand. Emily's hands trembled as she set her phone down, her pulse a rapid thrum in her ears. She had watched the footage 3 times, hoping she had missed something, hoping there was a logical explanation. But there wasn't. Luna had moved in ways no cat should be able to, appearing in different parts of the apartment without crossing the space in between. And the way it had looked at the camera, directly, almost knowingly, sent a chill through her bones. She forced herself to take a deep breath. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe there was a technical glitch, a trick of the light. But deep down, she knew better. She had felt it from the moment she picked Luna up in that alley. Something was different. Determined to find answers, she searched online for unusual feline behaviors. But nothing matched what she had experienced. No explanations for the silent movements, the eerie intelligence, the unblinking golden eyes that seemed to see more than they should. Frustrated, she decided to take Luna to the vet the next morning. That night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. The apartment felt too quiet, too still. She turned onto her side, and her heart nearly stopped. Luna was there, sitting on her nightstand again, watching her. "You know I'm scared, don't you?" Emily whispered. Luna didn't move, didn't blink. But then something strange happened. It tilted its head slightly, just like it had in the video, and let out a soft, breathy sound. Not a meow, not a purr. It sounded almost comforting. The next morning, Emily wrapped Luna in a blanket and took her to the vet. The moment they walked into the small clinic, Luna stiffened in her arms, its body unusually tense. The vet, a middle-aged man with a kind face, took one look at Luna and frowned. "That's quite an unusual kitten you have," he said carefully, reaching out to examine it. Luna let out a low vibration. Not quite a growl, but something close. Emily held her breath as the vet gently lifted Luna's paw, checking its claws. Then he did something strange. He checked behind Luna's ears, pressing lightly against its skull as if looking for something. His fingers froze. He looked up at Emily, his expression unreadable. "Where did you say you found this kitten?" "In an alley, a few weeks ago." "Why?" The vet hesitated, then shook his head. I don't know what kind of animal this is." Emily's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've worked with animals my whole life, and I've never seen anything like this." Luna's tail flicked once. The vet pulled his hands away slowly, his eyes dark with something that looked an awful lot like concern. Emily held Luna closer, her heartbeat loud in her ears. She had come looking for answers, but now she wasn't sure she wanted to hear them. Emily left the vet's office with Luna wrapped tightly in her arms, her mind racing. The vet's hesitation, the way his fingers had frozen when he touched Luna, she couldn't ignore it. He had looked at her like she was holding something impossible. She had expected strange, but not this. Not a professional saying, "I don't know what kind of animal this is." The words replayed in her head as she walked home. The city around her buzzed with life, Cars honking, people chatting, the distant wail of a siren, but it all felt muted, like she was moving through a fog. She needed real answers, not vague concern. As soon as she stepped into her apartment, she set Luna down and grabbed her phone. She scrolled past vets and pet experts until she found something different. A wildlife biologist who specialized in rare and unidentified species. Her fingers hovered over the call button. Was she really doing this? She glanced at Luna, who was now sitting on the windowsill, tail curled around its paws, watching her with those unblinking golden eyes. She pressed the button. A gruff voice answered after 3 rings. "Doctor," Andrew Keller speaking. Emily took a steadying breath. "Hi, my name is Emily Carter. This is going to sound insane, but I think I have an animal that doesn't exist." Silence. Then, instead of laughter or dismissal, he said, "Describe it." She told him everything. The way she had found Luna, the unnatural silence, the strange way it moved, the footage, the vet's reaction. She expected skepticism, but when she finished, there was another long pause. "Send me a picture," Dr. Keller said. Her hands were clammy as she snapped a photo of Luna and sent it. The moment it delivered, her phone rang again. "Where did you get this?" His voice was sharp now, urgent. Emily's stomach twisted. "I told you, in an alley. You need to listen to me very carefully. That's not a cat. It's not even fully grown." Her breath hitched. "What do you mean, not fully grown? These creatures, whatever they are, have been spotted before, but never for long. They don't behave like normal animals. They're intelligent, more than they should be. And if it's chosen to stay with you, that means something." Emily's skin prickled. Chosen? Like it had decided she was… what? Safe? Or useful? Dr. Keller's voice dropped lower. "Emily, has anything strange happened since you found it?" She thought of the way Luna had growled at the man following her, the way her other pets avoided it, the way it always seemed to know more than it should. "Yes," she whispered. Dr. Keller exhaled. "Then you need to be very careful, because once they bond with someone, they don't let go." Emily's throat tightened as she looked at Luna. It was still watching her, still waiting. And for the first time, she wondered if she had saved Luna that night, or if Luna had found her on purpose. Emily ended the call, her hands numb as she set the phone down. Her apartment suddenly felt too small, too quiet, as if the walls were pressing in around her. She turned toward Luna, who hadn't moved from the windowsill. It just sat there, tail wrapped neatly around its paws, golden eyes reflecting the dim light of the room. There was no fear in those eyes, no confusion, just patience, as if Luna already knew what had been said. She took a slow step forward. "You knew, didn't you?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "You've known all along." Luna blinked once, slowly, deliberately. Emily's chest tightened. The way it moved, the way it responded. It wasn't just instinct. It was understanding. She wasn't dealing with a lost, helpless animal. Luna had never been helpless. But despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to be afraid. Maybe she should have been. Maybe the vet's reaction, Dr. Keller's warning, the strange footage. Maybe all of it should have sent her running. But as she stood there staring at the small creature she had taken in from the rain, she felt something else entirely. Loyalty. Luna had been with her every day since that night. It had protected her, comforted her, understood her in ways no animal should. It had saved her from a stranger in the dark. Had it chosen her? Maybe. But wasn't that what love was? A choice? Slowly, she walked toward the windowsill and sank down beside it. "I don't care what you are," she said softly. "You're mine, and I'm yours." Luna let out a sound, not quite a purr, not quite a sigh, something softer, something almost human. Then for the first time, it moved toward her without hesitation, pressing its small, warm body against her chest. Emily wrapped her arms around it, feeling its steady heartbeat against her own. The fear melted away. Whatever Luna was, wherever it had come from, it had chosen to stay, and she wasn't going to turn her back on it now. Days passed, and Emily stopped searching for answers. She no longer questioned why Luna never meowed, why it moved the way it did, why it seemed to sense things before they happened. She simply accepted it. One evening, as she sat curled up on the couch, Luna stretched lazily beside her, Its golden eyes flickered toward the window just before a knock sounded at the door. Emily stiffened. She wasn't expecting anyone. Luna's ears twitched, its muscles tensing ever so slightly. Then, slowly, it turned its head toward her, waiting. Her pulse quickened. Something told her this moment was important. A crossroads. A choice. She glanced at Luna, and for the first time she didn't feel alone. Taking a steadying breath, she stood up and walked toward the door. Some choices were made for you. Some you made yourself. And some were made the moment you picked up something from the rain, not realizing it was never lost to begin with. If you had been in Emily's place, what would you have done?